make it, so I'm going to make sure that it's available for anyone that couldn't make it post this webinar. So if anyone has any issues with that, please let me know, but it's more to ensure that everyone's got access to the content. So that means we've got 3 there. So we've got quite a few still yet to join us. So it must be the time of day where everyone's struggling to get back inside and to their computers. But have a bit of a relax until it hits 5, and then we might start.
Andy?
Yes, I'm picking out some of the old images that I have back when I used to run out back New South Wales some years ago, but I love that one. I thought it was perfectly timed for a 5 o'clock session. Should be looking somewhat like that out there at the moment. Great.
Bit chilly, I imagine.
Yes, yes. So if everyone's got the chat open, hi Linda, thanks for chatting, and Patrick, thanks for adding that into there. If you've got any questions throughout the whole session, please feel free to drop a message into the chat, the group chat up there. But if you wanted to, there's not too many that will join us today. I think there's only around about 20 or so. So you will have the opportunity to jump in and talk and turn your videos on if you like. Just see how the streaming goes on your end to make sure that you can still see everything. That's the only concern with people in their videos. It tends to use the bandwidth, but we'll monitor it and see how it goes, because with only 20 it should be fine. So what I might do is get started, knowing that we have set a time for this and we are recording it. As I said before, there's quite a few that couldn't actually make this time slot and have asked for the recording post the presentation. So keep that in mind as we go, and we'll start talking about Sturts Steps. So first of all, for those that don't know me, my name's Laurie Mode, and I'm helping run the Sturts Steps project as one of the 2 project managers on this grant. The second one is Mark Pascoe, who works with Public Works Advisory. So between the 2 of us, this project will be implemented over a 3-year period. And the grant has actually come from Infrastructure New South Wales under the Restart program for New South Wales. So without further ado, I'll also acknowledge our traditional owners, of which we all are based today. And from my native Aboriginal people here, which is the Darug people, may I say Warrami, which means welcome to today's session. So let me jump in, and I wanted to quickly ask a quick polling question, and that is to say, why are you here today? So if you wouldn't mind just having a look at that poll and just nominating which one is more relevant to you. Why are you wanting to learn more about Sturts Steps today? And just gives me a bit of an interest on literally who we're aiming our content today for. So the first one is, do you have a business in the area? Do you have a tourism business in the area? I live here. I think the project will help my current role. I'm a potential supplier, or I'm interested in the project as an outsider. And some people might have just got the invite and thought it'd be fun. So just if you wouldn't mind just nominating that for me, that way it gives me a bit of a thank you, Emma. I'm sure you were the one that put that last one. No, it wasn't. Okay. And that's really helpful for me. So thank you for that, and I will just share the results with you so it gives you an idea. That's great. So most of us are in the tourism sector here. We're still waiting on a few more to join us, but I'm assuming, Mia, the 3 of you are in the tourism area. So thank you for that. The second question I have for you, which I will go to the second one, is just in relation to, if I can get it to number 2, is how much knowledge do you have on the project right now? Because I know some of you, like me, or I've sat with and spoken with, but how much information do you feel that you have? So I need to fill in the gaps on today's content. So if you wouldn't mind throwing your answer in there for me. Give you a few more seconds. Great, and 2 more I'm waiting on. Great, so most of you are saying you've got some knowledge, which is good. So hopefully after today, you're going to know a lot more about the project. So really, that's great. Okay, knowing that, I will proceed. So this is the route we're talking about. So if you have a look at the map that's on your screen now, we're talking about a circular route that goes from Broken Hill up to the corner and back to Broken Hill. It can obviously be entered into from different angles, including Burke, White Cliffs, and even, of course, South Australia or Queensland. And it's a circular route as close as it can get to the route that Sturt actually took. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that a little bit later. But the whole touring route is 1,100 Ks, and quite coincidental, the distance from Sydney to Broken Hill is 1,125 Ks. So it's quite a large amount of kilometres that we're talking, 70% of which is actually dirt road. And I'm sure all of you know this. So landscapes are constantly changing out there. And for me, I think from a tourism perspective, which is where my history comes from, and certainly knee deep in tourism history over the past nearly 30 years, it's about the open space, it's about relaxation, and it's about local experience. And those three things are really making a great opportunity for tourists to come into this area, and one that we probably haven't been able to capitalise on because of a lack of infrastructure in this area from in the past and today. I thought I'd give you a bit of context first on what we're talking about from a tourism perspective about the region. And unfortunately, the statistics are only done on a regional basis as Outback New South Wales. So you can see that big red area. The statistics I'll share with you now are for that area in particular. So when we look at all the different statistics from December 2019, this gives you a little bit of a flavour for what we're seeing. So 2.1 nights on average, $390 million spent in tourism in the whole region. Majority of the visitors that come into the area are 60 to 69 and highly on a holiday purpose, but very closely behind business purpose. And I think places like Tibooburra and even me, yourself, coming through the Silver City Highway, people travelling for business. 48% are actually from regional New South Wales that travel to the area, which is a very high percentage. 39% are from all other states. So making up various different sectors of that percentage, of course, to make the 39. International is not our strong point at the moment, but the ones that we do get are from the United Kingdom or Germany. And on a basis of other regions, we've only got about a 1.2% share of the whole of international visitors in New South Wales. So that gives you a bit of an idea, but it's a $466 million industry, and of a domestic percentage, it's 2.4% of total overnight domestic stays in New South Wales. So a little bit higher than our international figures, but still not a big percentage of visitation for the whole of the state. Now, what I thought I'd do is also give you a bit of a research page that I found that was done literally it was released last week, and that is telling us the lessons of COVID and what people were saying as they came out of it. What are they looking for more of since they've experienced COVID? You can see very clearly here that spending time with family and household members was up the top. I don't think we appreciated them as much as what we do now. I can certainly speak for that myself. And we enjoy that slower pace of life, which we've been experiencing in the last 10 or so weeks. Prioritising financial savings was up there, more cooking time and baking. But as you read through this, there is a lot that is triggering that relaxation in our lives. And particularly in that spending more time in nature, there's a few things that will be ticking tourism boxes. And I think we saw the results of that last weekend. I did a quick poll myself on what was actually happening in regional New South Wales. And let's just say most of the places were bursting at the seams. What we've got to try to do now with the school holidays coming up is obviously get them out a little bit further from the eastern seaboard and into some of the western areas. But we're ticking the boxes. So if you're a business that's out there marketing yourself to visitors, start using some of the terms that you can see here: relaxation, spending time with your family, getting in touch with nature. That's all the stuff that is coming out in the research. So the more you talk about it, the more it's going to trigger some response. So let me talk about Sturts Steps now. So the proposal actually was submitted, would you believe, in January 2019. With a couple of months prior to that, working on it. It was finally submitted in January 19. We had some questions and we asked to submit a phase 2 report in April 2019. We got indication that we got the grant in September, and then negotiations until January 20. And then we had 3 lovely things: fires, flood and COVID, which certainly put some delays into place, unfortunately. But we finally got the signed deed on the 24th of April. So that means we're hitting the ground running and trying to catch up with a lot of the timeframes that we had indicated. Obviously not all of them can be met. So we're adjusting as we go and working with Infrastructure New South Wales on that. So the proposal was this: that Charles Sturt's history is a very important piece of Australia's history. And this is a trigger to create a tourism journey where you not only get the history of Charles Sturt, but you're getting history of all other elements, as well as interpretation of current day and what you're seeing and experiencing. The project is modelled on a business case scenario to bring 70,000 extra visitors to the area each year. That roughly equates to 40% of those visitors that are going to Broken Hill. So what we're trying to do is increase our length of stay from what currently is a 1.5 nights in unincorporated region to 2.8 nights. So we're trying to increase that length of stay. We're trying to also, by doing that, we increase daily spend. So at the moment, it's $93 per person per night. What we're aiming to do is to up that another $31 to $122 per person per night. And this strategy of Sturts Steps is really a sum of all parts. So it's probably the most multifaceted grant that I think Infrastructure New South Wales has had, and I actually acknowledge that. But that's the important thing about tourism, that it does take a lot of different things for a holistic experience. It's not just one element. So there's different aspects in attractions, there's wayfinding, which I'll go into a little bit further into the presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to jump in at any time or throw it into the chat, and I'll monitor that as I go. So the next slide there shows you the beautiful map from Sturt's diary. And as it says there, unlike what Sturt had to face, it's a pretty relatively easy journey today. But it's really intriguing to sort of match that route with what we're proposing. And that certainly, as I said, is the catalyst to what we're trying to achieve here. So the overall aim is to provide an environmental tourism experience. It's trying to say, why would you visit here as opposed to somewhere else? It's providing engaging experiences that enhances a trip to this area. And the whole idea of tourism is that everyone benefits. People as they come out and as they depart, that you've got a bit of a flow-on effect into other communities around you. And to keep open the opportunity for this to grow over time by setting some foundations in place for then to have add-ons continue for decades to come, when I'm sure I'm going to be not around dead and buried, I'm sure, when this can continue on to bigger and better things down the track. But it's setting the foundation so that that can happen. The objectives are to provide infrastructure that interprets the history, and also provide amenity for visitors. So get them to stop and get them to stay longer and get them to spend more. to link the experiences and navigate them through an enticing area, and minimise driving fatigue. So this was part of the business case that we needed to address. And also, as you would know, we've had the road is being sealed to the border, so it's quite timely with that being added to the region that we can look at this project and benefit from that. And then to join all the stakeholders and their experience offering so that they all benefit from this increased experience in the area. Again, a bit of a sum of all parts strategy. So what does the grant include? This is where we get to the good stuff. So 2 town welcome signs at Milparinka, which we haven't got in places yet. That's the only town that doesn't have the silhouette signs on all sides of a town. So we've got 2 more to put up. As we calculated the other day and went through our sign register, we've got over 100 wayfinding signs that go around the 1100 kilometre route. We originally scoped it out and got around about 40, but as we sat down and looked at every single one that needs to go in place, there's over 100, and each one of those needs to be approved. So it's a bit of a journey ahead of us. However, it's part of a really strong part of this touring route is to have that wayfinding in place. We've got 12 interpretation shelters, and basically that is the area where people can stop, take in some information, but they'll also be the areas where we're trying to have repeaters installed, so there is a digital integration, which you'll see down the bottom there, a digital tour guide platform, which will interact with those shelters. We've got 3 museums going in Tibooburra and Milparinka, and then 2 camp kitchens, both at the same locations. We've got an astronomy park that's going to be put into Milparinka that is self-guided, and 4 art installations, so art sculptures that will be placed in strategic locations around the journey and adding to the ones that are already there as well. We've also got 2 native animal sculptures that will be put at Wild Desert up at the Sturt National Park. And national parks have been amazing in helping us get the walkway to the Sturts Cairn, and also the stabilisation of Sturts Cairn as part of this project and funding. We talked about the Wi-Fi zone, so that goes to the interpretation shelters, and that's how the digital tour guide will inform at the shelters, but also in the museums and the towns that they pass. The refurbishment of the post office is part of this project and a very key component to try to stabilise what's existing and not let it degrade any further. B&B accommodation will be added to Milparinka also as part of this grant. And the final thing there is the refurbishment of the Milparinka waterhole. Ironically, that's the bottom one there is one of the ones that's nearly complete in stage 1 of that. So I can show you a little bit of that a bit later. So that is all the elements that come to pass as part of this grant. And the proposal that we gave to Infrastructure New South Wales basically said that we've got all of this content we're going to tell people about, and it comes in themes. It comes in beginning of time, which is everything from our Indigenous history to our astronomy. It comes in our European exploration. It comes in the geology, which is something that still amazes me, how many different geology formations are out in this area. The local landscape, the wild dog fence, and outback living. You know, how are people running stations out there? What is different to city living? All of that type of thing. So that was submitted as part of the grant, the business case to the government, and we had to come up with what was a look and feel for that process. Something that certainly the committee, we have a governance committee that looks over this project, and this is something that we've carried on now that we've started the project. But you can see there that the look of Sturts Steps is reflected in the landscape that you see out there. And also with a beautiful colour palette that we can reflect in all different looks that we need in logos, in signs, in everything that you see, which will be a visual identity for the project. Now, I do have a question for everyone, and this is a really important one, because we need a touring route icon that we can put onto our signs and get a bit of recognition for our touring route. So I have a bit of a poll because I'd love people's opinions on what they see is is the best one that would reflect an easy to visualize logo, which could appear on the signs as they're journeying around the 1100 kilometres. So I would certainly love your feedback on this. The committee are sold on one of them, but I won't relay that to you just yet until we get the votes in. But if you could just tell us which ones you prefer there. Is it A, B or C? And you can see that what we're trying to do is bring things from the landscape itself so that they're identifiable. And I think that's pretty much done. So I'll share the results with you. And certainly the mulga is the preferred option, which good to see that the committee is on track, because that's the one we chose. So it's a really good connection to the area. It's quite unique. It's quite simple and can really be reflected in the signage quite nicely, as you can see there. So as we go through the brown and white applications, we're hoping to have signs like this telling people which way they need to turn to continue on that route. So that's awesome. I think we're on the right track. The next one I really want your feedback on, though, is the icon for heritage, because this is an interesting one, and this is to try to direct people to things like the Sturts Cairn and Pool's Grave and different areas like that. And I think we can certainly stylize our own, and we might have to use some of the government recommended ones. You can see there D is the RMS heritage icon, and E is the National Parks heritage icon, which they currently use on their relevant signs. We're hoping that we can suggest potentially something else, but I would love everyone's opinion on what they feel is going. Oh, I'm still sharing that with you. Sorry about that one. Heritage icon, if you wouldn't mind just telling me which one you prefer out of that. And if you don't care, just tell me you don't care as well. Just waiting on a few more. That's great. And we'll continue this poll on our website for a couple of weeks. And that's everyone. So let me just share that with you. So certainly the horse and hat is in the running, but only by very few. So this is good. This one needs a little bit more work before we actually solidify on a position for our heritage icon. But I really appreciate your feedback on that. So let me jump to the next one, which is the outback geology. I'd love, again, your feedback on this one, because this is not in stone yet, excuse the pun. And if you wouldn't mind just letting me know which one you would see as resembling the area of corner country or the unincorporated area as far as geology is concerned. Wow, that was quick. Okay, well, let me share that one with you. So I think everyone's on the same page there, which is great. And certainly that's the one that the committee picked as well. So really pleased to hear that we're on the right page there. Seems our heritage one's going to be a bit more of a problem. So you can see that the themes that will be that have been put into the business case will be reflected on the signs, very similar to that. So when we're pointing to, say, the graphite mines or something like that, it'll have the geology symbol. Cameron Corner obviously is the dingo fence. If there's flora and fauna, it'll have that symbol, etc. So these ones are used at key turning points on the road. It's to try to keep the visitors confident of their journey and which way to turn. And we can use our attraction names at the attraction turn-offs also to make sure that they don't miss any turns. Let me show you some of the other signs that will be present. So this is the directional signage, and this is used predominantly where there is other signs. So black and white signs, so the white with the black writing, or others that might be in the area. So it can either say one way or it can say both ways. And as I say, they normally complement other signs that are in place. Our other signs are our gateway signs. And this is literally saying, welcome to Sturts Steps touring route. You're now entering the journey. And we're hoping to include, fingers crossed with budget pending, that we bring the RMS open road, closed road component into here to work with RMS to make it a little bit more efficient, to tell customers coming through which roads are open, which ones are shut. So at the moment, it's very human resource driven, whereas if we can get it digitized, we might be able to make it a lot more efficient and quicker for the information of our visitors and our locals. And you can see there, as they're on the reverse side, if you're leaving Sturts Steps, it basically says thanks for visiting. The other signs that we will have are things like directional signage. So it might be just the icon because they've already been told further back that something was coming up. So it's just to say that, you know, this is the journey and here, it's right here that you turn. So all the different levels of signs you can see here, from gateway through to map signs. You can see there that at certain points in the route, we're telling people you can go this way or you can go this way, and it still brings you out to another point along the journey. So there's around about 4 of those along the route that gives people that consideration point of which way they could go. The directional signs which we've spoken about, the add-ons, the attraction signs, the directional markers, and one which I haven't mentioned is the route confirmation markers. So this is for the city folk, just to emphasise that you're on the right journey, and if you see that marker, it's just reminding you that yes, okay, I'm confident now that I'm still on the right track. So let me show you how they might look inside. Obviously it's a little bit comical looking from a comic, but it gives you a bit of an impression of where it would be placed, and as you're journeying through, how visual it may be. There's your touring map signage, which you can see is a good option if there's a turn off coming up. Which one would you choose? There's your directional signage, so it might give you a route off to a different area that has nothing there, and that is actually one of the points on the journey. And there's another option with your attraction locator. And here's where it can be used with existing signage. So we talked about that, the double arrow one that can say you can go that way or that way. And then here's your markers. So it's actually here where you can see some of the European history and some of the early interpretation from beyond beginning of time, and also a parking area. And here's your journey confirmation markers. So they're put on gateways. There's a few gates that might be shut along the journey, and for city folk, they never like to go through a gate. So it's just saying, no, this is the track. You can enter through here. Just make sure you shut the gate as you drive through. And then we get to the eyes. So the normal iconic eye, which you'll see, the blue and white one, normally signifies a place of business that provides information to a visitor. The yellow and blue eye is the accredited visitor information centre. So that guarantees you that there's someone there that is to provide information only. Whereas a blue and white eye, information's available, there are people there, but they're probably not dedicated towards giving you information. What we're adding to this project is a bit of a stylised eye to say that we've got information for you, but it's not manned, it's self-guided, and that comes in the way of interpretation shelters and markers that will be placed along the route that will help understand the place they are, any history, any relevant information for that visitor. And you'll see some examples of where that's placed a little bit down the track in this presentation. So let me jump to the interpretation shelters now, which we spoke of. There's 11. Now the concept of the Darling River Run was used in proposing this element, one that actually I managed back in, it was 2008, I think it was, we started that. But it's basically a shelter. You can see on the right there, the one at Louth is the most common, and that is from Lightning Ridge right down to Pooncarie. The different one, of course, you can see on the left there is the one at Wentworth, because we had an existing structure there that we could use, and we made it fit that structure. But this is the sort of concept that is the inspiration for the interpretation shelters for Sturts Steps. But we have a huge opportunity here to really make it stand amongst the landscape, but also be iconic in attracting visitors to those shelters. So we've got a few designs, and again, I'd love your feedback on which ones you think might be suitable for the landscape in which they will be located. So the first one, I should be getting Emma to talk through this, because she's the one that basically pulled this together, but the interpretation shelter option 1 was drawn from the surrounding ranges and looking at the different things that she saw in the landscape, but also the yarning circle opportunity, and bringing that to life in concept number 1. Obviously, considering that it might be like a corrugated iron roof. Obviously the purple is reflecting the colour of the landscape, but won't be actual purple on site. It'll be used with materials like blue metals and things like that. That white frame there that you can see will be the interpretation information, and that seating around it allows people to sit down and read it, but also use the digital integration to have the extra knowledge through their own device to get information down from the Wi-Fi, or the repeater I should say. So that's concept number 1, and in the landscape it could be placed in a location like that. So this is actually one of the locations that we're looking at. So option 2 was drawn from the clay pans and different cracks that you see in the landscape when there hasn't been rain or the dry creek beds. And that one is reflected in a image like this, where you've got some staggered what would you call them, Emma? She's on mute. I don't know.
Like a staggered roofing, I guess.
Yeah, so it's actually showing the different shapes that you see in the clay, and how you could actually make that look as part of one of the interpretation shelter options. And the roof that you can see there that Emma just mentioned. In the landscape, it would look something like this. So quite a simple frame, but still quite iconic with the landscape that you see. The third one is drawn from the natural ripples that you see through the creek beds and surrounding areas. And this one has a corrugated iron roof that would cover the 2 sides, and we have the ability to have interpretation on both sides like the previous version. And we could actually add seating to it to create that yarning circle feel, so people can sit and revive as well. And in the landscape, it could look something a little bit like that. Concept number 4 is probably more of a basic shape, and probably reflective of what we would have seen on the Darling River Run. Again, having a complete cover over it. And in the landscape, it could simply look like that. So with the 4 in mind, I would love to hear what you think. Which concept would you like to see in the corner country? Now remembering there's 11 different locations, some in towns, some outside of town. Some at Sturt National Park. Okay, and one more vote and we're done. Wonderful. I don't know if all 3 of you are agreeing, Mia, but you're doing well if you are. Okay, great. So on that one, we've got concept 3, certainly the favourite. Concept 1 still up there, and concept 4. So great feedback. This one needs a little bit more discussion at the committee level. So this information will be used to help that, and also the ongoing poll that we'll have on the website. So thank you for that. So the next one is the totem signage, and the totems are the smaller version, if you like, of the interpretation shelters. And these are put in places where there might be one piece of critical content that needs to be interpreted at a specific location. So it doesn't actually cater for a lot of information, but it's also telling you where you are still on the journey and with the content around that heritage or that, that information you want to relay. So an example could be, we want to place these next to each sculpture. So it's interpreting the sculpture and it's saying this is where you are and this is where you could go on Sturts Steps touring route. Another example is in Milparinka, where we're going to be highlighting some of the heritage trail with these totems as opposed to extra signs that add to the landscape, whereas these fit in quite nicely. And these would be similar to the galvanized metal material that you see on national park signs for the wear and tear factor, and also the heat that we get out there as well. So that jumps me to all the different elements. So you've seen the signage and the wayfinding that we're proposing to take people on the 1100 kilometre journey and directing them right along the route with over 100 different signs. The interpretation centres is a museum, which is a prefabricated building that will be put in place, one in Tibooburra and two in Milparinka, to interpret the history of all the different themes that we have presented as part of this business case. And half of that information has already been collated and the other half we're pulling together. Milparinka enhancements is, as we said, we talked about the post office being stabilised, certainly the water hole and getting that back to somewhat of a clean state. We had cars removed and we had rubbish removed already from that site, but creating like a nice little outback oasis there. And also providing bed and breakfast accommodation into Milparinka. The camp kitchens will be a great addition to not only Milparinka but Tibooburra campsite as well, where we'll have yarning circles and a well-equipped camp kitchen for the amenity of our visitors that will be coming through both those areas. Sturts can we've talked about, and the stabilisation of the can, if you've seen it recently, it's falling away to one of the sides and we want to make sure that's stabilised appropriately to keep it there for many, many years to come, and also provide an easier walkway to the top of that can for our visitors. So that's part of where we're working with national parks to make sure that that happens as part of this grant. Fort Grey is the area where the Wild Deserts project is and the campsite. So we've got the bilby structures and the bandicoot structures going into that, as well as more interpretation. And because of the lack of mobile range that we have out there, we're going to be putting some digital integration into their interpretation shelters because they won't be able to get the repeaters that we'll have in the other locations of shelters. The sculpture trail is the 4 sculptures that I mentioned before, placed periodically throughout the touring route, complementing the ones that are also there, that are existing. And these will be based in places where a story will be told through this sculpture. So part of West Darling Arts working with us is to get a good community consultation on the story and what the concept will be to interpret that, and then it will be constructed and placed on site at each of those locations. And like I said before, the digital application will then tie it all together so people can actually experience it both in person and through their device with different aspects of interpreting the history and current day. To give you an idea of what that means, it could be as simple as being at a location. You trigger your device off the repeater, and through a simple QR code or a code that you're able to scan on the sign, it will then bring to life some video content around that history. So it could be some actors that are performing a scene of the history that is on your device right at the moment of time that you are sitting there reading everything that's in front of you. So it's just bringing another element of experience into part of this journey for them. The one thing I did forget to mention is part of the Milparenca enhancements is the astronomy park, which I mentioned before. So it's a self-guided astronomy park, and we're working with Outback Astronomy, who've got the one in Broken Hill, to deliver the one in Milparenca. So from here, the next steps are this, that the agreements for our partnerships are put in place, and there's quite a few happening, but the one with West Darling Arts is nearly at completion, so the sculptures will start to be commissioned very, very soon. We've got an application to TASAC, which TASAC, for those that don't know, is the Tourism Signposting Approval Committee, and they need to approve every brown and white sign that goes into a location. So we're going through that process. Now that we've completed the register, Mark Pascoe, my counterpart, who's out there at the moment, is checking all those locations and certainly checking that off, making sure we've got the locations right before we then submit to TASAC. And for those that don't know, TASAC is made up of two entities. It's Transport for New South Wales and Destination New South Wales, and together they make TASAC and they approve the signs that are put in place. And then the next thing is land approvals on all locations and elements. So that's the signs, the museums, everything that we've just talked about on the previous slide needs approval. So going through each one of those and ensuring that we have that in place before work starts. The agreements with National Parks for Sturts Cairn stabilisation, we're nearly at the completion of that as far as the agreement's concerned, not the stabilisation itself. But yeah, that is certainly hot on the tails of the next week. So after that, everything will start rolling on as far as all of the other elements that I've spoken about. The next community forum will be held on the 10th of September. So by that stage, we'll have a lot of work already done or in train that we'll be able to bring the community up to speed on. And you might start seeing some of your voted graphics in place in region very soon. And I thought I'd just add my email address there for anyone that feels that they think about it later and want to email me with anything or any comment on what you've seen tonight. You are more than welcome to do so. That's why I've thrown it up there. But because we've got a small number today, I thought we might get through a little bit quickly. So you're literally getting an hour's early mark, but I wanted to continue on with today's session, knowing that people were really wanting to hear about it, see it, and we'll throw this recording up on the website so that those people can get access to it. Any questions from anyone or any feedback? I think they've gone to sleep.
No, I haven't gone to sleep.
Okay.
No, I think it's a great idea. I think it's got lots of potential for adding to it.
Yes.
It started from Adelaide. I see you could extend it from, sort of between Broken Hill and Adelaide, following the whole route.
Absolutely.
Up other things, including, Sturts' journey down the Murray.
Yeah, completely, Paul. Yeah, and I'm pleased you brought that up, because one thing I haven't mentioned is, because of this project, we have been working with our neighbours quite closely, Bulu Shire in particular, and also Wentworth Shire Council. And right now, Wentworth Shire Council are applying for a grant to add to it as we speak. So they're looking at bringing some content into their shire that reflects what we're doing up here. And obviously, if they do that, the committee have agreed that they'll provide in-kind services to help them with all of their imagery to reflect what we're doing. But you're dead right, Paul. That's exactly the whole objective right from the start, was something to be added on over time. Patrick, you had a question there. Did you know how much unsealed road is left to Tibooburra when it'll be finalised? Well, I spoke to Tom Carruthers Thursday, and he said by the 30th of June, it'll be sealed to Tibooburra. you want me to unmute you? Yep, awesome. Okay, good. All right, fabulous. Yeah, so it's the road from Tibooburra to the Warri Gate will not be finished till December, but he guaranteed that to Tibooburra will be June 30. Great. Any other questions or comments? And I'm happy to also make this these slides available if you wanted to share with anyone in your local area as well. Just email me. I don't want to put these onto the website because I don't think the download speed will cope with the size of this document. But yeah, if you want to receive it, I'll certainly send it to you via a cloud drop. But other than that, look, that was pretty much what I wanted to inform everyone of. So I can certainly let you go and have some dinner and relax on this Wednesday.
And before you go, it's Paul here, and I'm representing the Charles Sturt Memorial Museum Trust.
Yes.
And the reason for my interest is that we're in the process of developing a submission to the Commonwealth Government to have Depot Glen, which is the waterhole, the cairn, Pool's grave and Sturts campsite, registered on the National Heritage List.
Yes. Yep.
And that's a project in process at the moment.
Yep. Wonderful. And how far are you into that, Paul, at the moment? I've been involved in National Heritage applications before through work I did with the Convict Trial Project.
I reckon I'm about 2/3 of the way through the form that you got to fill out and adding all the necessary information, but it needs a visit to the site, which is not available in the current situation yet.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for the border to open fairly soon.
Yeah, brilliant. It's an arduous process.
Yes.
So yeah, good luck with it. And
a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Great. Oh, well, thanks for your attendance, Paul. Really, really appreciate it. And obviously we'll keep you informed along the journey and make sure you keep in knowing what we're up to.
Thank you.
Pleasure. All right. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Mia. Thanks, everyone. I think Linda and Co have gone, but yeah, we'll load it up on the website, and anyone that wasn't here can certainly see it.
Okay.